Well, it's time right now to engage in all things legal matters as we take on another segment of So Now What, our Wednesday edition, where we have Legal E's director, Eitan to talk to us about the more unconventional side of the law. And today we're addressing the issue of what legal recourse and actions can you take and legal rights you have when you call out a company on social media for subpar service delivery or products. Do you even have a right to do so? Or what kind of trouble can you get into if you go about it the wrong kind of way?
Defamatory.
Exactly. Yeah. Good to have you, man.
Good to be back. It's been a while.
Yeah, man. We absolutely love you because you do kind of place things in context for us, and especially when it comes to social media. It's kind of a new frontier, I would imagine, for law, because
100%.
You're playing with fire very often, especially if you're going to call out a big company with a very kind of a big issue.
Well, if you think about it, I like, the laws, and certainly laws around freedom of expression have been around for a long time, but social media is like 10 years old, it's brand new, so the laws are still catching up.
Well, maybe this is where we need to really tread lightly, but let's put it into the context of maybe kind of having you've got a bad service experience, maybe a product is defective, and you want to then, as you would, tweet about it because that's the most official thing you can do. I don't know whatever happens to writing a complaint or something along those lines, to get maybe their attention, maybe you're looking to get compensated, or you just want validation for your frustration. Is that legal? Can you get into trouble?
So for sure, look, we have freedom of expression, the right to freedom of expression. It is legal to say whatever you want as long as it's not hate speech or inciting violence. So 100%, if you are upset with something, you're allowed to go onto social media. But going onto social media, of course, has consequences. So, if you you mentioned defamation, you're allowed to say things, but if it's not true and it's not in the public interest, the blame can be put back on you.
What else hasn't been proven?
100%. I mean, social media, to a large extent, there's a lot of information out there, and we don't know what's true and what's not. So it has become a bit of a trend that people have a frustration and put it on social media. But the reality is, how believable is it all the time? So we, as readers, need to be very cognizant to look at what we're reading, and we need to be our own judges to say, like, is this a believable thing or not?
Yeah. And so let's say it has been confirmed to be true and your complaint is valid. Is the company then legally required to offer you some kind of compensation, reservicing? What happens?
So really interesting question. So the answer is no, they're not legally required to. So if they have done something wrong and they have broken a law, for example, you buy a product and it's defective, then we've got the Consumer Protection Act, and then they would be legally required to replace the product.
Is a tweet enough to engage that?
Absolutely not. So it's become, people think that, once it's on social media, that's the court of law. But that's just the court of social media. If you want a company to replace a defective good, you have to approach them in the way the way the law allows you to, which is approach them, ask them to replace it. If they don't, you can take them to court, you can sue them. It's a bit more of an arduous process. So that is why people go on social media. But a company does not have to, they don't have to respond, they don't have to give you anything. You would still need to go the extra mile to use the mechanisms the law has provided for you in order to get recourse. But, then that's the thing. Social media has become this nice shortcut, and sometimes it's used for good, but sometimes it's used to cause a lot of damage.
Well, and it can be very damaging for a company, for a smaller company, especially a company existing in the online space, to have that kind of defamatory.
Yeah, 100%. It's something that people must remember. Like you look at a company online, you think it's a big entity, but often it's just a small business trying to survive, and your comment can cause a lot of damage to them. So it's really important that people, the law provides a lot of mechanisms for you to get recourse if someone's done something wrong. But before you go and put something on social media, you should really consider it to make sure that you're not going to be causing someone damage
just
because, when you've got a little bit of frustration.
So then what can the company do against you? Because I don't think a lot of people think about that. Because we spoke about if the claim...
You're a liar.
Yeah. if the claim is found to be true, then you're, I guess, at all right. But if you falsified something...
100%. So if you falsified something, first of all, being true is not enough of an excuse to say something. In South African law, if you want to say something, it has to be true and it has to be in public interest. So, for instance, I go to a restaurant and I want to say, the person that owns this restaurant is from a specific race or gender or something, and I'm allowed to say that on social media because I can say on social media because it might be true, but it's not in public interest. What does it matter to anyone? So truth is not enough. Public interest, Is it the public? Does the public need to know this information? That's a big factor. If you say something that's not in public interest or not true on social media, then the person, the company can have recourse against you for defamation. You've said something which has harmed me, and now I'm going to get damages from you.
Wow.
And so if you cause someone to lose money, lose business, they can put the claim straight back against you if it wasn't true and wasn't in public interest. Of course, what everyone needs to remember is that when you're on social media, you are directly linked to your network as well, your employer, your family, etc. So before you do anything on social media, you must remember, once you press that post button, that is going to be seen by between 0 and 2.2 billion people, and you have no idea how many.
It's going to affect your own image
and
as
so
much as the person you're
100%.
defaming,
And the first thing, if you put something on social media that isn't true or not in public interest, the first thing they're going to do is going to contact your employer, and your employer is going to be brought into it. So we really have to be careful. Before you press post and say whatever you want about people, we must make sure that we can stand by what we say.
But it also brings into question, why are you doing it anyway? If you have a valid complaint, why not go to the source and complain to them? Why are you putting it on social media?
Number one, you've got a lot of recourses. You've got to go to the source and complain yourself. You've also got certain ombudsmen, which are like consumer bodies, which are there to protect us as the consumer, as the South African public. So the law has mechanisms and recourse for you to use to complain about things on, that happen to you with service providers. So my personal view on it is social media is a great tool, very, very powerful tool, but make sure you've really exhausted the remedies that you want to go, that you can go through before you just go and put something damaging onto the internet, because it's kind of the Wild West once it's out there.
Yeah.
It's out there, it's out there, man.
Absolutely. Also, Eitan's going to stick around for a little bit longer, and we'll be back in a moment figuring out, so now what, with our friend-in-law, Eitan Stern.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. Thanks so much for sticking around. We're continuing our discussion with lawyer and director at legalese.co.za, Eitan Stern, and we are talking about our legal rights when it comes to very publicly calling a company or a brand out for their maybe subpar services, for anything, maybe a product, on social media. Always interesting when the law and social media.
Yeah.
And you were saying earlier on, Eitan, that there is a whole ream of things that you can follow legally that will allow you to exact revenge, if you will, or receive due
So that's what you're trying to do.
Maybe
that's what you're trying to do.
You know,
get
but sometimes those complaints are just they're really valid. And once you find yourself, let's say, in a service industry and you've been disappointed with the service you've received, what right do you as a customer or a consumer have to ask for that person to be dismissed from their position of work?
Okay, well, I mean, you as a consumer, you've always got a right to ask. It doesn't mean that right has to be respected.
Yeah.
You know, in general, if you're going to be putting something on social media to say someone should be fired, like, that's quite an extreme thing to do. But you can always ask. The company doesn't have to respect it, and there's absolutely no automatic right in order to, if you put something on social media which says someone has to be fired, that the company has to let them go. But it does put companies in quite a difficult position, because you've got the court of social media, very little context, public opinion around it, and it does put someone in a very difficult context, because now they either have to act or seem like they're not acting. So it does get complex.
Where do sites that allow us to do it stand in this? So like your Hello Peter and Yelp being some of the more prominent ones.
I thought that was a spoof on South Park. It's a real thing, Yelp.
It's
I'm a Yelper.
something that exists for people.
Yelp is massive in the United States. It's so these are called consumer review websites.
Yeah.
And the whole idea, they're just like any other social media platform, like Facebook or Twitter, but they are directed around people putting consumer complaints or issues. So Hello Peter is a very big one in South Africa. And you can go on there and you can kind of state your issue around a company. Where do they stand? They stand in the same way that Facebook stands, or some guy that you met on your way to the bathroom
So just by you making that comment on that site, it doesn't absolve you from the culpability of if you've been defamatory. on that space, even though it's inviting you to be
Yes. No,
in that
100%
way,
doesn't.
you're still at risk. Yeah.
Yes, 100%. I mean, the idea of those sites is to channel consumer complaints so that companies can talk directly to their consumers around these issues. But it's not a court of law. If a company wants to take action on it, they'll take action. If they don't want to take action, they don't have to. And then you've still got the recourse to go to the ombudsman, go to the courts, send a letter of demand, etc.
Sure.
Yeah. And then from a company point of view, is it incumbent on the company after the resolution or non-resolution of an issue to report back to the public after it's been aired on social media?
It's not compulsory. A company can decide to do absolutely nothing and, and stay silent on it. But this whole era of social media has meant that and it's one nice thing about social media, it's meant that there's more transparency around the world.
Yeah.
So companies sort of need to now issue statements. It's now easier for you to issue a statement on how you feel about something or say that something's been dealt with or be resolved. So companies don't have to do it, but it suddenly becomes a PR, a public relations issue.
PR,
and then it would be silly of you to have a public complaint, say nothing, and then not let your consumers know what's happened with it. And we can think of a lot of examples that companies have just dealt with PR really, really badly in a situation that could have gone right, and they've just kind of ignored it or dealt with it badly. And so it's not a legal issue; it's a public relations issue.
Yeah, I'm seeing the flip side of that, a company inviting tweets if there is an issue with a particular service and then addressing it immediately. And I had a phone call literally seconds after raising a question about a particular bus route that wasn't running on time, and literally it was sorted out within moments. So maybe that's a way that you can use the social media platform in a very positive way
for sure.
to
I mean,
engage in a PR.
We've talked on the show about influencers before, and this is the good side of influencers is that you can promote brands. The bad side of influencers as well is that they can really destroy brands.
Right.
And, if you are certainly someone in an influential position, either you do it for a living or you got a lot of followers, you must, first of all, make sure that you are legally allowed, or according to the contracts that you have, that you're allowed to put these criticisms, and also ensure that whatever you're putting out there to the public, you can stand by.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff. Let us know your thoughts on our Facebook page,
Please do.
Expresso Morning Show, SABC3.
Nothing
Keep it
defamatory.
PC.
Nothing defamatory.
Thanks very much to Eitan Stern.
Cool.